Well, talk about surge pricing. Shares of Uber and Lyft are surging this morning as California passes Prop 22, meaning drivers will be able to remain independent contractors and not employees. Early Uber investor and founder of Inside.com, Jason Calacanis, joins us now. Jason, I'll bet you're as subdued as ever about this, but really, this was not nearly as close as the polls suggested. I mean, 58% is pretty resounding. We got the concession on this pretty early in the night. Do we now move on to figuring out how these companies can make conditions and safety nets better for workers?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I would like to thank the media for doing such a great job covering what is obviously a little bit of chaos today, and for the American people to be patient and get every vote counted, because everyone does count. Prop 22 is really a parallel to what we're seeing across the country and Trump's absolutely shocking and outstanding performance. We heard Roger just talk about it before I came on air. How is this possible that Trump got all these votes? Well, I believe that there is a war going on within our country between rural voters who would like to live their lives and not be told how to live those lives, and an emerging hysterical socialist left, and which we sometimes refer to as coastal elites. But those coastal elites actually do not agree with the hysterical left. And they don't want to tell people how to work. And what Prop 22 did was, and the reason why 70% of drivers didn't want it, is they wanted to force people who very much enjoyed picking their own hours and making arguably $15 to $30 an hour in the face of having other choices like working for McDonald's for $10 an hour. McDonald's forcing and fighting tooth and nail for decades against a minimum wage increase. Or the fact that Amazon and Apple had to raise their minimum wages to $15 an hour to compete against gig work that DoorDash, Postmates, Lyft, Uber, and many other companies had put out there that was so much more compelling to the average American as an entry-level job or as a side hustle, a way to make that extra $100, that they voted unanimously that they do not want the government telling them how to work. Yeah. And they don't want to show up in a uniform and work at McDonald's from 5 a.m. to 4 p.m. and not put their kids through school or drop them off.
How do the companies make it better from here, though? Because yes. This is a repudiation of the state saying we know what's best for everybody here. This is direct democracy. People saying, no, here's what we want. But there's still this issue of safety net. We saw it happen during COVID when so many drivers were not able to have those fares and those rides. I mean, we're still in this period. I shouldn't say during COVID as if it's past. There are a lot of possibilities that your Dara Khosrowshahi's and others, Tony Xu, have put forth for ways that workers could be protected. How quickly does that move forward at this point?
One of the great things about this split election, where it appears Biden's going to win by just a hair and we might have the Senate go slightly to the GOP, is that these people we sent to Washington are going to need to get together and look at something like the minimum wage, which has not changed since 2009, $7.25. Australia has I think a $14, $15 minimum wage at this point, the second highest in the world. And companies, tech companies specifically, are leading the charge. Amazon, which is derided and they want to break it up, has a $15 an hour minimum wage. Uber, run really exceptionally well, is putting money into people's safety net. What we're building in the technology industry is a second safety net. There's already a safety net: unemployment, welfare, food stamps, all the different programs we have in this country paid for by taxpayers. What the gig economy did, and boy, are these idiot politicians in California who are destroying the state and driving the top leaders out of the greatest state in the nation. It's not the greatest city, but it is the greatest state with the greatest coastline, the greatest weather, the greatest technology. These idiots are driving people to Texas, Nevada, and Florida so that they can have more freedom to run their companies and not have these idiots, these absolute incompetent idiots. Tell them how to run companies. And we are doing a better job at leadership than they are. And it's infuriating, and that's why they lost. And that's why Trump is so close to winning. Sorry, I'm very upset
Jason,
about it.
You mentioned. Okay, bringing you back to the topic at hand, you did mention minimum wage. I do think it's worth pointing out that in Florida, there was a vote to increase the minimum wage. But I want to ask you specifically about Uber. Of course, you're an early investor there. I think it was interesting that Uber made adjustments to the app ahead of the vote to make the app more of a marketplace. And then there was just a report out from Morgan Stanley saying that Prop 22 could give Uber an advantage in the competition for driver supply because it is the larger app, the larger player, and the argument now that you could see more drivers concentrate their hours on Uber. How do you see Prop 22 impacting the competition between Uber and Lyft and impacting these companies in perhaps ways we may not have anticipated because there was just so much of a focus on whether or not 22 would pass or not?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. This has been a super overhang for literally, I don't know, every year after the second or third year of Uber, when they started to be so successful and they started to spread like wildfire. When you add these regulations, whether it's regulating social media, it basically pulls up the ladder for competitors below because the companies with the most money, the biggest war chests, get to defend themselves. So all the regulation would have done, part of me was like, wow, this would be pretty great if Prop 22 fails, because then Uber gets to say, you're all full time. You work the hours we want you to work. We're lowering the rate you're going to get. And you got to wear an Uber logo and T-shirt, and you got to drive a certain type of car. It would actually standardize the process and make it less of a marketplace. When Travis started the company, I asked him, hey, Travis, why don't we give everybody an Uber shirt, or why don't we provide them with car washes? Because I would get friends who'd be like, I just went into an Uber. It was dirty. And he said, Jason, it's a marketplace. We cannot exert how they deliver the service. Once we do that, they're employees. Well, guess what? If you make them employees, we at Uber, unless I'm saying I'm a small shareholder now, but Uber could then say, you know what? You can't work for Lyft. You can't work for DoorDash. You can only work for Lyft. So then to the person on top who's got the biggest, that's what would have happened. So Uber wins either way in this. But what's most important is a vibrant competition. If you want to fight the real enemy, Walmart's paying people $11 an hour. McDonald's is paying them $7, $8, $9, $10 an hour. Let's start there. And let's start a program within the greatest country in the world where we raise the minimum wage 5 to 10% a year
Florida,
for 5 straight years.
Yep. Florida started that process, Jason. But, there are still those who believe this is not about telling the companies how to run their employee base. It's about those laid off drivers who filed for unemployment, that you and I paid their benefits because the company never paid into the pool, and that it's just labor arbitrage. Okay,
guess what? If you're a real estate broker, if you're a freelance writer, you have freelance journalists, I'm sure, who work at CNBC. Poor Vox, an up-and-coming, media company, had to lay off or fire every journalist in California because of these idiot, absolutely incompetent, backers of these type of AB5 programs who said, you can't have freelance journalists anymore. And you know what we need to do? We need to let Americans decide how they distribute their labor. Pre-pandemic, we had the lowest unemployment of our lifetime. Look at the free market. Look at how it's operating. If we have the lowest unemployment and wages are going up for people in that bracket, and Walmart, it has to raise to $11 to compete with Amazon, who's at $15, they're reacting. And even Apple, who had a disgracefully low store price, hourly wage for their store employees. And they got absolutely admonished for it, and rightfully so, since they're so unbelievably profitable. Everybody has to compete for that class of employees. There is no loser in a vibrant, competitive, entry-level market like this. Right. People are choosing that they want to drive 4 hours and be able to pick their kids up and take them to soccer. Well, because working an 8-hour shift sucks, and having to wear that uniform sucks.
That's how free market capitalism is supposed to work, and I think we can all acknowledge it needs some guardrails, but not necessarily.
And that's the minimum wage. Yeah. So let's all work on that instead of picking one company because you don't happen to like them.
A lot of people disagree about the minimum wage, but that's for another day. Jason Calacanis, thank you.
Okay, a little bit. Give them a little bit on the minimum wage. All right. $7 is ridiculous. Let's go to 10 and just call it a day. Let's start somewhere.
All right.
Disgraceful.
Good to see you, Jason.